Oh, all right. Welcome back, Jacob. And 4:15. This is week 3, day 2, the 31st of August. We're going to talk about variables today and get into chapter 3 and chapter 3 in Bernard. So let's get into it. So as anyone, I posted up yesterday, I kind of got caught up. I was a little behind, so sorry about that. But I finally am caught up and have posted the homework number 1, as well as discussion board number 3 and quiz number 2 for this week. Let's take a look at what those have. Your quiz this week, you're going to be looking for answers to questions like at least 3 factors that go into making a good research question, as well as 2 hazards, which make research unfeasible. We'll talk about that a little bit on Friday. Cultural relativism versus moral relativism. That's an easy intro to cultural anthropology question that he talks about in this chapter, and talks a little bit about ethics. And then compare and contrast nomothetic and ideographic theories, which is each study and what are the strengths and weaknesses of each. We'll talk about most of those on Friday. We're also going to talk about a discussion question for this week. So for today, we're going to talk about the 5 types of variables, and you're going to have a homework this week that talks about those, and you're going to get a little chance to play with them. So we'll talk about what are the differences and what do they mean, internal states, external states, behaviors, artifacts, and environment. So your discussion question for this week: which of these types of variables is easiest to operationalize and measure from an ethnographic perspective, and why? Which is hardest and why, and give specific examples to illustrate your position. You may not have an opinion on it right now, but hopefully by the end of the class today, where we actually try to define and operationalize these variables, you probably will. Okay. And then your homework, which I also posted up yesterday, is right here, and we're going to do it today. So we'll talk about that in just a second. Okay, so we're, I think, a day behind, but that's not too bad, especially with the break coming up here, or the day off for Labor Day. We get caught up pretty well. So like I said, I'm going to flip this chapter in half, and I'm going to do the second half first, and then do the first half about theory and about research questions on Friday. This is also for 2 reasons. One, we've been talking about variables and operationalizing things quite a bit in the last 2 classes, so I wanted to kind of just keep on that theme rather than going a different direction and then coming back to it on Friday. But the main reason is that you have a homework this week, which I just talked about, that we're going to start today in class, and that way you can have more time for it, right? If I would give it to you on Friday and we did it on class, and Friday would only be, you know, Friday afternoon or evening or Saturday that you'd have to work on. Hopefully this way you have a little bit more time to think about it and to do it. Maybe not just all in, you know, a 1-hour go. Okay. So last time we talked about operationalizing variables. What does that mean? And why might that be tricky? Guess that was 2 times ago, but yeah, we'll still talk about it today. Yeah, right. Put it into work, making them measurable somehow. Right. So I want to study honor. Well, that's cool and all, but like, how are you going to do it? Right. I want to study love and culture X. Well, how are you going to do it? Right. It's all about how you're going to do it question. And then on Monday, we talked about linking those variables, right? How do you link together variables, and then maybe what are some of the problems that go with that, right? Because oftentimes we'll do this more in week 5. What we really want to do when we do research, right, and create a research question, is oftentimes taking 2 variables and looking at the relationship between them. I want to look at the relationship between age and percentage of people who own a car, right? Easy. Look at, I can operationalize those both pretty easy. I can give a survey: do you own a car, yes or no? Or I can observe that and go visit somebody's house, and then I can do a survey or a questionnaire that asks, how old are you, right? And then I can come up with all kinds of interesting things based on that, right? I can say, yeah, there's a relationship, right? That maybe people below the age of 16 don't often own a car. Makes sense, right? Maybe people over the age of 90 often don't own a car as much as people who are young. Right? It's a basic social science research question. Or there could be no relationship, right? There could be a flat relationship or no correlation at all between age of person and do you own a car. The point is that sticking two variables together is what makes a good research question. Why don't we want to stick 3 or 4 variables together? Why don't I want to study my variables are age, owning a car, having a low flow shower head, and living what county you live in? It's a mess, right? Like if I say age and car, the research paper like writes itself, right? You can think of the title, the correlation between age and vehicle ownership, right? And you can think of what kind of possibilities can come out of that study. If I put that whole mess of variables in there, it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't draw you to a certain kind of conclusion or a research question. And especially in here, this is like first taste of research methods. We're going to do 2, right? Just easier. Always start with 2. Why not 1? If 2 is easier than 3, why not 1? 1 is less than 2. Yeah, right. You're just stating a fact. You're just doing kind of descriptive statistics. In this town, there are X people who are under age 18, 19 to 45 is this many, and above 70 is this many, right? It doesn't actually, it's not research, it's just description. So today in class, we're going to talk about those different types of variables, and we'll think about the different ways that you can relate them together. Yeah. We also talked about some of the problems with linking variables, right? And we talked about this issue of like false causation or spurious correlation. And we had a nice discussion, I think, about the PBS, right? PBS and political views, right? What was that all about? What was some of the problems with trying to understand if PBS, working at PBS made you more liberal as you worked there longer? Do you remember this from last time? Yeah.
For X amount of time, whereas it was actually just they were from different generations.
Yeah. Cohort effect. Yeah. Yeah. So oftentimes, even if we see a kind of relationship in our numbers and they're like, oh, yeah, look, it works out, that we have to be careful that we're not just kind of over assuming something, right? That we're not just placing our own ideas on those without actually going a little bit deeper. So we'll talk about that a little bit more on Friday and then in week 5. But today we're going to talk about different types of variables. And for that, it might be good to look at the homework. Homework's in 2 steps. We're going to talk about relating variables and operationalizing variables, right? Two parts of this. This week we talk about what we'll talk about right now, 5 different types of variables and how they intersect with between them and can lead to research questions that are interesting. This activity will help you begin to think of possible research questions that we will explore in more depth in future weeks. So kind of, this is like a going back to pedagogy kind of thing. My pedagogical, what pedagogy is? What's pedagogy? You should know. You have to write reports and stuff, right? It's a word, right? It's about like teaching philosophy. So my teaching philosophy for this class is that all the homework should be building off of each other. It's one of the comments I got from theory was that people liked how things built off of each other. So that way, when you write your paper, you're not like, oh, now I need to like come up with a research question week 15. So it's gonna be hard. So every homework in this class should build off of a previous homework. And then when you get to your paper, you have come up with a research question. You've defined and operationalized your variables. And then you come up with your literature and you've done each week these different activities of participant observation, interviews, surveys, all that kind of stuff. So when you go to write your paper, you at least have started, right? You won't be all of them. So the homeworks, make them not too bad. Like for the literature review, right? You'll do like 5 next week, I think. Your paper will be more, but you'll get started and you'll figure out kind of how to do it. And so that's what we're kind of doing this week. It's getting you started on your research. We have a topic in this class, water and people in Eastern New Mexico. And so when we do this activity today, we'll kind of be focused on that. Right? You could do it about anything. You could do it about, I'm interested in age and car ownership or whatever that previous example was. But we're going to do it based on this. It's a little bit more limiting than if you were just like, pick any topic you want. But I kind of thought about it a little bit, and I think that it will be nice to get you started on your research project, right? Just to kind of get the gears turning and start thinking about these issues. Okay, so on page, if you have your Bernard with you, he talks about these on page number 90, types of different studies, right? And he talks about 5 different kinds of variables: internal states, external states, reported or observed behaviors. Sometimes he groups these together as one, and sometimes he splits those into 2 separate categories. Artifacts and environment. Do you want me to just tell you what they are, or do you want me to ask you? Did you read it? Okay. Well, internal states, what do you think that's all about? What? Internal states, what do you mean by that? Yeah. You think that? Yeah, right, beliefs, ideas, perceptions. So when you kind of write those out, that's usually how they're framed, right? Beliefs about traditional gender roles. Do you buy into them or not? Or gender roles? Are you more traditionalist or are you more progressive, right? Ideas about water conservation. Do you think water conservation is a cool thing to do, or do you think that it hurts business or whatever? Political beliefs, right? Political ideology. Do you think that you should raise taxes on rich people, or do you think that that hurts the economy, right? Beliefs, values, perceptions, attitudes, and usually they'll be framed that way, right? There'll be one of those words usually stuck before whatever you're talking about, right? Attitudes about American versus foreign car manufacturers. Right? Do you think that we should buy USA, or do you think that Japanese cars are better than American? Right? It's all about what you think. Yeah. Huh? What? Homework number 1. You can also look at the variables on page 90 of Bernard. So that's internal state. Number 2 is external states. These are external characteristics. What are some external characteristics you might have? Age, right? I feel like I'm 20. Too bad, right? I'm not. My 40s. I feel like I'm rich. I'm not. I'm a professor at Eastern, right? There's a difference between internal states and external. External states are those external characteristics which characterize people, right? Age, wealth, your sex, things like that. Things that are pretty easy to determine and measure. Not always, right? Wealth, people can be a little shady about. Oh, I'm middle class, right? That could be anywhere from 40,000 to 250,000. But yeah, external characteristics of people. Third one is behavior, and like I said, sometimes he divides up reported and observed behavior. I wasn't sure which to do. I ended up putting them together just because it makes less boxes for you to fill out. That takes like 5 boxes off of the homework, so I kind of grouped them together, right? This is what people actually do. Do you go to school? How many days a week do you go to school? So that is a behavior. I went to school 3 days this week. I went to school 4 days this week. This is different from the external state of I am a student at Eastern, right? This is about behavior, about what you're actually doing. What people eat, who they communicate with, how much they work, how much they play, how many hours, or how many minutes a week do you shower, right? That's a behavior. Bernard breaks these down into 2 subtypes. reported behavior versus observed behavior, right? And you can do either one of these because there is a difference. This is why sometimes he breaks them into separate boxes, right? Classic case, Bill Rathje's garbology study asking people how much beer they drink. I drink 1 beer a day. Then he did an archaeology project of their trash, and lo and behold, they drank 3 beers a day. Right? There was a discrepancy between the reported behavior and the actual behavior. How many times a year do you go to church? Well, I go every Sunday. And if you go and actually take attendance at church, it was like less than half or something like that, right? So what you're actually doing. Artifacts include all physical residue from human behavior. Oftentimes, these variables are expressed in like owning or having, right? You're a person and artifacts are inanimate. So do you own a car? Right? That is an artifact. Yes or no question. Do you own a low flow toilet or on-demand hot water heater? Right? Those are all, let's see, artifact type questions. Or the 3 little pigs. Is your house made out of sticks or straw or bricks? Right? Artifacts. And finally, environment, your physical and social environmental characteristics. This can be things like, what county do you live in? Could also be, what's the depth of the water table in the area that you live, in your neighborhood? How much rainfall do you get in your town every year? What is the percentage of chance that your town gets hit by a tornado? Right? Or flooding, right? This is often in like FEMA kind of stuff if you've ever looked at like flood zones, right? The percentage chance, if you've ever bought a house, you have to look at the flood maps, right? Is your house in a flood zone in Portales or not, right? Are you 6 inches higher than everybody else? Those are all environment kind of questions. There's also the social environment, right? And he gives the great example of like government types. Do you live in a monarchy versus a democracy or a communist country? Do you live in, free market capitalism versus an oligarchy kind of thing, right? So those are the 5 different types. And he does this cool thing where he makes a table and puts the 5 different types on the x-axis and the 5 different types on the y-axis. So what we're going to do for your homework this week is you're going to fill in these boxes 1 through 15 based on the relationship between the different types of variables. Right? So what is box number 1 going to be all about? What types of relationship there? What's this box? What's this one say? What's this one say? So this will be internal versus internal, or internal slash internal. Yeah, yeah. How about this one? Just picking ones at random. Yeah, artifacts versus external. And so you can kind of figure out how to read the chart. I just wanted to kind of go over it in class because maybe it's not clear. How about this one?
Recorded versus reported.
Yeah, behavior versus behavior, right? So you basically just go through and you fill out each, and it's kind of like a thought exercise. You're not committed to any of these combinations or variables. It's just to get your brain thinking, right? What are external states? What are, reported or observed behaviors? And how, and not only that, but how can I fit that in to this topic, water and people in Eastern New Mexico, right? If I just picked, say, put anything, right? On one box, you might write, I don't know, running speed versus age. And on this one, do you own a car versus your gender? It wouldn't make any sense. So we're going to pick one topic and try to fill in all the boxes for something about water and people in Eastern New Mexico, right? Again, you're not committed to these. It's just a thinking activity. And then hopefully one of these will be interesting to you. And once we do our literature review, you'll find one of these that you're like, yeah, that's actually like kind of interesting. And I'm interested in studying that a little bit more. We're also not going to worry about the causation areas, right? You're not going to try to make a research statement out of this. You don't have to say, I think age is the primary factor in whether somebody uses more or less water, right? You don't have to do that. You just say, I'm looking at the relationship between age and water use. Right? That would be what? What is age and water use? What box would that go into?
That would be internal and external? No. That would be internal and observed, right?
What do you think?
I think internal.
What do you think, Jose? Age and water usage, amount of gallons used per year. What box does that go into? I'm looking at the relationship between age and number of gallons used per year of water. What box does that go?
Oh, wait, I know.
Let Jose try.
Okay.
He's so quiet in the back. She can do it. What do you think, Taylor?
I think that it's external state
Yes.
and reported and observed behavior.
What box number is that?
So that would be 7.
Yes, box number 7. Very good.
Cool.
What about? I think I'm going to observe the relationship between number of inches of rainfall a year on the area you live and whether you own, whether you have center pivot irrigation on your farm.
Wait, what? Oh,
Environment versus.
External.
No.
Oh.
Environment's right. What? Yeah, environment and artifacts, which is number 14. Yeah, very good. We're starting to get this game. It's a fun game, right? I hope so. We'll do one more. Yeah, well, that's why we're doing it in class, right? Religious beliefs versus do you have a rain barrel? Religious beliefs versus ownership of a rain barrel.
Internal versus artifact.
Yeah, and what number is that?
That's gonna be 4.
Yeah, and what if I changed that slightly instead of religious beliefs and I said number of times gone to church in the last year and ownership of a rain barrel?
That would be external.
Yeah, what number is that? Number 8, yeah. Starting to get the game. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do, is you can start to fill these in. And I filled them all in for myself, just to kind of give you an idea. So if you get lost, you can kind of look down here. We'll go around the room. Yeah.
So on those boxes, the ones that you built in. So would like one box be like one of our would one of those boxes be our question, like our research question?
Hopefully in the future you will. No, it'll be one. Hopefully in the future, like in week 5 or so, you either will go back to this and find one that you liked, or you'll make something new, right? But the idea is to just get you kind of thinking about the types of things that we might study in. Right? So for instance, if I parts I can't get half of things to turn off. We'll just do it on the screen, I guess. Right, so for internal states and internal states, right? Religious beliefs, right? A belief that you have, and attitudes about water rationing for conservation, right? Those are both internal states. They're both things that I think in my mind, what I think about religion and what I think about conservation. Yeah.
Like income versus attitude towards money would be something that would be.
What box would that be?
Well, that one would be that would be
what do you think, Caitlin? Income versus attitudes about money. Attitudes is a good hint. Yep.
But I think
income would be yeah, internal versus external, right? And so you can see I did one in here. See, I'm trying to do each of these not just randomly, but something about, you know, water, agriculture, conservation or something. So the age someone is and their beliefs about whether people should get tax breaks for agricultural activities, right? A good research question. Maybe people who are older are more conservative about these tax breaks, or maybe they want to conserve more, right? Who knows? Reported versus observed, versus a reported or observed behavior versus internal states, right? Maybe your political beliefs, right? This is different from political affiliation. You have to be careful on internal versus external. Church membership is an external state. I am a member of the Catholic Church. You don't actually have to believe anything to be a member, right? Or I don't have to necessarily have the same political ideology as someone else in my same political party, even though we're both members of the Republican or the Democratic Party, right? One could be more conservative or less conservative than the other. So you have to be careful sorting those out. Artifacts versus internal states, beliefs, right? You can tell these internal ones have the word belief, belief, attitude, ideas, right? They're all going to be kind of in your brain kind of stuff, right? And your terms should have that. Artifacts versus internal states, beliefs about long-term viability of agriculture in Portales in Roosevelt County, and owning a center pivot irrigation. Yeah.
What is the importance of like knowing where to like knowing the difference internal and external states? Like how is that like with our research?
It's going to help you think of the different possibilities of things that you're going to study. Because oftentimes people get confused and they kind of match them together, right? Or it's not really clear what variables you're studying. And I think kind of nailing down, so this is helping you think of the different possibilities. And then you'll be able to pick two. And like we said earlier, having two really strong variables is going to be a lot better for doing research than a bunch of messy, kind of ill-formed, half ideas. Right? Yeah. Internal states versus environment, right? My ideas about gender roles and do I have a grass lawn? That might seem silly, but what might I actually be interested in? Or how might those two things go together?
Well, in the, like if we assign
yeah, like my super macho cop neighbor has the best lawn in the neighborhood, right? He's out there like watering every night and fertilizing. He has like one of those flamethrowers to like burn it every year.
Maybe like stay like that.
Yeah, right. Maybe he's busy, or maybe he has different ideas about like expressing masculinity, right? And that seems like a real gendered question, but it's also tied to water use, right? Because if you have a lawn, you're going to be using a lot more water than if you don't. So that's all the internal states row. We can also look at external states, right? Political affiliation. This is different from an internal state of like political beliefs or ideology. And a second external versus external. So my political affiliation and my membership in an environmental conservation group. I'm a member of Greenpeace, right? Or something like that, or Friends of the Water. And I'm a registered Republican or Democrat or whatever, right?
So it seems like in this exercise that language and the way we use it is very important. Because because it says a membership in a environmental conservation. But if you were like to say like, oh, this person's a conservative, it would be internal, right?
Yeah, right. Your internal beliefs. Like, do you think conservation is a good thing? That's an internal belief. Versus, are you a member of the environmental club here on campus, right? That's an external state, a membership. I can look at the membership roles. And maybe someone joined because they got free food that day, or they, their girlfriend was in that club, so they joined, even if they don't believe it.
Well, I was just about to say, because doesn't affiliation and membership also kind of insinuate belief? Like,
not always. That's why it's kind of separate in there, right? Because there's a difference. There can be a difference between, what you believe and what you do. You can be, why did you vote for this politician? Right? External state, we all voted for politician A. Why did you vote? Well, they were my cousin. Well, they had the same views on economics I have. Well, they're from my hometown and I've known them forever. Well, they
so like the difference would be like
they support my position on gun control or something.
Like the internal would be like, I believe in my president.
Yes, I believe. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you could even look at that relationship, right? Do people who believe that there should be stronger gun control, vote for candidate A versus candidate B, right? That's a great, if you do those kind of questions, you'll have no problem being employed. The newspapers will hire you to do, you know, voter demographic kind of stuff. It's a great way to use your degree.
Cool.
External states versus reported or observed behavior. So I could look at the sex of the different interview people or informants, and how many bottles of water do you drink a week, right? Are you a tap water person or are you a bottled water person? Artifacts versus external state, your income, how much money you made last year, versus ownership of low flow toilets. And maybe rich people invest in these fancy low flow toilets, or maybe poor people have them because their landlords don't want them using so much water. I don't know. External versus environment, number of years living in eastern New Mexico versus where do you live, right? Do you have city or county water supply? We could also look at the reported and observed behavioral line. So behavior versus behavior. Reported agricultural production. How many cows do you have? How many acres of wheat do you have? Versus reported water usage. So I might be interested in, do people who are big farmers use more water per acre than people who are small farmers, or something like that.
Would like scientists and like people in STEM use reported more often than like other ones? So like that sounds
There are strengths. Yeah, more than like internal states. That's more like Anth or Psych or Soc, you know, kind of thing. Bernard tries to kind of cover his bases with all the different kinds. And you'll notice that some of these are easier to fill out than others. And I'm not sure if it's going to be idiosyncratic, like if Jose will have a harder time with environment versus internal states, and, you know, Kathy has more problems with reported behavior versus artifacts. I don't know. We'll see when I get the homework side. But I do think that some boxes are easier to fill than the others. Like when I was filling out, some of them like, oh, it's easy, and some of them I had to like think about. What's nice is that Bernard gives you on page 91 and 92 a bunch of examples. He gives like 3 examples of each type of box. So it's not talking about water in eastern New Mexico, but you can kind of see what types of studies. These are actual studies. They're not just like him being like, wouldn't it be cool if we studied age and religion? But he gives citations for people in social science who have actually used that box for their research question. Behavior versus artifacts. Ownership of a low flow shower head and number of shower minutes a week. Maybe some people have this conservation shower head, so they take more showers because they can, or maybe they take less because they're conscious of water, or maybe people who take longer showers have the high flow shower heads because they don't care about the environment at all, or something. Reported behavior, that's in the wrong box, actually. Should be, yeah, that's not right. It should be county of residence, and it should be presence. Yeah, I think I messed that one up. Should be something else. We'll fix that later. Artifacts, ownership of yard sprinkler system, ownership of city water, right? Do you have city water? Do you have sprinkler? Theorize that people who are on well water probably don't have as much sprinklers. Maybe not. And artifacts, environment, ownership of tractor and depth of irrigation well, and environment versus environment, average rainfall per year, and presence of groundwater on property. Yeah.
Does artifact have to be ownership?
No, but usually they are, right? Because they're artifacts. We think about like intro to art or origins. We talk about definitions that are artifacts are objects made or modified by humans, right? So usually there's an ownership attached, but it doesn't have to be, especially if you live in a different society. But in our society, we have a lot of emphasis on ownership. So fill in all those boxes. I'll fix my one there. And that is step 1. Step 2 is you're going to take those, write out how you would operationalize each pair. It doesn't have to be long, just a sentence or 2, but try to be specific, right? So then you take your box. So I'm going to take box number 1, religious beliefs and attitudes about water rationing. And then I'll put it here. Religious beliefs. How might we operationalize religious beliefs? Let's see. Well, I might do a survey, right? Here's a survey of different topics. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to, follow the 10 Commandments or something like that? Do you believe that you have to, if you work on the Sunday, you'll go to hell or something, right? I don't know, religious beliefs. We could have a whole survey of that. And attitudes about water rationing for conservation. I could do a questionnaire about water rationing and conservation, right? I could ask people, do you think that, there should be stricter penalties for people who use too much water or something like that on the questionnaire? Similarly, in number 11, behaviors versus artifacts. Behavior, number of shower minutes per week. Well, I could do interview questions. I probably won't do participant observation, someone's shower, but I'll ask them, right? How many shower minutes did you use per week? Question number 1 on my survey. And question number 2 on my survey or my interview, do you own a low flow shower head? Yes or no? Easy, 2 questions, right? Operationalized. Environment versus environment, number 15. Average rainwater per year. I can get that data from National Weather Service, cross-reference with people's addresses, and presence of groundwater. County Water has a map of how deep the aquifer is in different parts of the county, and then I could look at where their address is and figure that out. This is just to show you that there are different ways that you can do this, right? This is interview questions, this is a questionnaire, this is a survey, this is externally produced data. All different kinds of ways you might operationalize those beliefs. So you just go through and write a sentence or 2 for each of those variables. Is there questions? We're almost done for the day. Do you feel confident? That doesn't sound very confident. So what I think that we should do is start on this activity today and tomorrow. And then on Friday, we'll come back and we'll start working through some of the examples that you have. And if you have any questions, if you're like, I couldn't figure out how to operationalize, beliefs about wealth and, do you own a hot water heater, one of those direct hot water, something like that, right? Who do you vote for versus, whether you support higher taxes or something like that, right? If you're not sure how to do it, come on Friday with your chart as filled out as possible. And we'll workshop them in class on Friday, which is why I wanted to do it today, instead of just, if this was the end of the class for the week, and I said, good luck, turn it in and I'll see what you do, right? Okay, any last questions before we wrap up?
When it comes to like the step 2 examples, I want to make sure that it's not just like. So operationalize these is just meaning like how to test them. So like,
you should be able to put it into 1 or 2 sentences. How I would test ownership of a tractor, right? I might do a survey. I might ask you in an interview question. I might participate at your farm and take note of seeing tractors there.
And then for like depth of irrigation, be like, I would measure it. I've measured the measuring tape.
Or you could ask them, right? Because if they have a well, they all know how deep their wells are, or maybe the county has it or something like that. Yeah, Megan. Okay. Everybody feel like you can at least start this activity? Yeah. Remember, if you don't fill in all your boxes, that's fine. You will come on here on Friday and we'll talk about it. And we'll try to fill in any missing gaps, either in the boxes that you have or in the operationalizing of those variables. Cool? Yeah. All right, that's it for today. That was the whole class. Yeah, I'll see you on Friday. Thanks.